Ladies and gentlemen outside to start making their way in. Like this. 30 seconds. Twenty seconds. Generous. And we're going to start in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Close the doors. Leave them outside. I choose not to be a common man. It is my right to be uncommon if I can. I seek opportunity, not security. I do not wish to be a kept citizen, humbled and dulled by having the state look after me. I want to take calculated risk, to dream and to build, to fail and to succeed. I refuse to live from hand to mouth. I prefer the challenges of life to guaranteed existence, the thrill of fulfillment to the stale calm of utopia. I will never cower before any master, nor bend to any threat. It is my heritage to stand erect, proud and unafraid, to face the world boldly and say, this I have done. Honorable Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, Mr. Parkstow and team, Absip Advisory Council, represented by our chairperson, Metra Foster Romano, Absip President and NEC members here with us in person and also virtually, the CEO of National Economic Fund, Mr. Dan Mani, and the head of BBBEE Policy Unit at the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition, Mr. Mukuti, the CEO of Black Business Council, Mr. Hanki Matabane, Absip members, stakeholders, and friends, good evening. Riperili, Ahe, I greet you. My name is Kanyisa Pika, and I am the Deputy Chairperson of Absip Women in Focus. Thank you for gathering with us this evening. I want to start off with just the housekeeping rules before we get engaged. The restrooms are just outside this door, even that door over there. The ladies are just behind me here at the back, and for the gentlemen, just next to the registration table at the beginning, at the entrance. In case of emergency, please follow the exit signs gently and softly, no pushing. But our friendly staff will help us and steer us. Ladies and gentlemen, this evening we are gathered here to engage on a transformation fund that has been proposed by the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition. The South African government has proposed 100 billion rands of this transformation fund, which is aimed at promoting economic transformation and enabling meaningful participation of Black South Africans in our economy. And as Absip, we saw it fitting to have this conversation today, this evening, because we understand the importance of the fund and the impact that it will have for our society. But also as a financial sector, we understand the importance of sector as the driver of economic activity. And so we want to gather here tonight to engage robustly at what has been proposed. And this is, I think it's important for me to state that this is going to be the first series of many of these discussions to come. And so for this evening, we want to gather engagement with entities that have envisaged the fund and be able to understand the active role and the process that was at play in organizing and creating this proposal. I'd like to believe that all of us here in this room are activists of change, or at least proponents of transformation in our country, but more importantly, we are vested in our country and wish to see sustainable economic growth for all South Africans. And so tonight, before we begin, I want to introduce up on stage, and it gives me great pleasure to call onto the stage Mitra Fosa to give us the opening remarks, and then I'll share with you what we're going to do next in the evening. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening, Minister. Honorable Minister Pakistau, esteemed guests, Absip members, all partners in the economic transformation, our respected Mzi, I don't want to pronounce your surname much, but I'll try. Diamond.
Perfect.
Right. I'm from Pretoria, I'm sorry. I just said Diamond. Diamond, all right, Diamond. Key representatives from GTIC, Levuhani, Mukiti, our influential Khanki, Matabani, and moderator Dumisa, Quebec, my esteemed Absip Advisory Council members. I'm glad you're here, NEC members, and all stakeholders for joining us. Good evening and welcome. When I was asked to do a welcome remarks, actually I was not asked. I said to them, I see this advert, you're talking about transformation fund. What do you know about transformation? And you don't invite me, you invite me like you're inviting everybody else. I'm the chairperson of the Advisory Council of Absip. You exist because of us. You must learn to respect elders. And then they invited me to do the welcome. I don't know who was going to do the welcome. I'm sorry. I have taken your space. So we gather at a pivotal moment demanding urgent and impactful economic transformation. This transformation fund, we believe, presents a critical opportunity to meet the aspiration of our people. It is both an honor and responsible to open this critical dialogue at a time when our country is grappling not with whether transformation must happen, but how it should be designed, governed, and delivered. We meet today not to rubber stamp an idea, Honorable Minister, but to interrogate. I'm from Bantu education. Interrogate it with clarity, honestly, and most importantly, shared purpose. Absip strongly supports initiatives uplifting the economically marginalized, and as the voice of the Black professionals, we are committed to fostering meaningful dialogue to shape our nation's economic policy. Today at the IMF spring meetings, on the sidelines dialogue with the topic, who will be the next president of the African Development Bank? Our own, our founder, our member of Absip, and a member of the Advisory Council, candidate for the President of African Development Bank, Swazi Chabalala, is amongst them. And Absip, we are very proud of that. Clap hands, please. It shows that Absip, we are deliberate when we talk about transformation. And not only we send, with the support of the government, our own to lead in the African continent. And we just wish her all the best to make sure that she becomes successful. And as Absip, it will show that what we do, I remember the first slogan of Absip was a deliberate action, or I can't remember, we had many slogans. Minister, thank you for availing yourself and for initiating this space for dialogue. For many in the private sector, the announcement of this 100 billion draft transformation fund stirred deep questions about transparency, governance, impact, and inclusion. The concern was not the goal for transformation, but whether this model will enable the kind of systematic change that outlives budgets and boards. At Absip, we often say, if transformation were easy, we wouldn't be having this conversation. We'll be at the victory party. But here we are, still building, still debating, and still dreaming. Absip has always stood as a bridge between vision and action, between policy and people. Our role is not only to present the voice of Black professionals in finance and investments, but also to amplify solutions that unlock our collective potential. Today's conversation is not about resistance, it's about responsibility. It's about the collective duty we all carry. Government, private sector, civil society, to rebuild an economy that gives every South African a stake, a voice, and a pathway. This consultation represents an important turning point. It's an important turning point. It says we don't only launch initiatives, we listen, we refine, we co-create. So let us use this moment well. Let us ask the hard questions, not to dismantle the fund, but to ensure it is built on foundations that can carry the weight of our country's expectations. And Minister, names carry intention. They shape perception, and they frame the story we are inviting others to be part of. While this fund has sparked those vital conversations, we believe there is room to reframe the narrative, beginning with its name. So I went on ChatGPT. I said, give me potential names for this fund. And it gave me the list of the names, including their explanations. Bo Equity Catalyst Fund, Income Fund, Ubuntu Growth Fund, etc. So all I'm saying is that the naming convention is very important. It changes the narrative, it changes the way we speak. While the board, you still do what you intended to do. But how you reframe it is very important. And I'm hoping this conversation today, we will get into those details. And also, this economy is also transforming. We are having new economies, things that we've never been doing in the country and all over the world. We're talking about critical minerals. We're talking about a whole lot of issues. So there's going to be a restructuring of the economy due to the demand of what is required outside. It's an opportunity for this fund to relook at how we can accelerate some of those things while at the same time we are empowering our people in that. So I hope the discussion today, we will be able to look at the broader picture in terms of how do we redesign this economy while we are ensuring that our people are benefiting from it, but as well as redesigning the economic structure of this country. To that, I thank everybody, and you are welcome, and I wish you brilliant conversation. And you must ask questions. Absip do ask questions. Absip created a lot of things. Otherwise, I will talk about a lot of things that Absip has actually created. But I'm wishing all of you a great conversation today. Thank you.
so much, Metrifosa. Without wasting any more time, I wasn't happy with your clapping. Sounds like you're still tired from the office. Thank you, thank you. So when we do call up all the speakers, please do almost like a standing ovation. You start slow, and then you go, so that I all feel like champions up here. It is quite nerve-wracking to be up here. So I'm going to call upon our NEC member, our Deputy Secretary General, to introduce our keynote speaker, and we kick off our conversation tonight. Thank you, Masiabi Marageli.
We are young. Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. And you know, to me, it's an immense pleasure that I introduce the Honorable Minister Pax Tau. And maybe just to set some context, Mamtrai, actually, I was supposed to do the opening remarks. And I actually spoke to Bukiwe, and I said, Bukiwe, since Sis Polo, who's our president, unfortunately could not be here today because she's in Nigeria, we need a shoulder to stand on. So why don't we actually allocate somebody to do the opening remarks, and I can just do the introduction of the minister, which I think is a more important role, Mamtrai. So we were aligned there, and I'm so glad that you did the opening remarks, Mamtrai. Thank you. So Minister Tau currently leads the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition, a critical portfolio in driving South Africa's economic transformation. He is also a respected member of the ANC National Executive Committee, demonstrating his continued influence in national policy. He is part of the team that was critical in negotiating the GNU principles and also crafting the statement of intent. His extensive career is marked by a deep understanding of governance and economic development. Minister Pax Tau holds a master's in public policy and management from the University of London. And this has very much complemented his practical experience. Minister Tau's journey includes significant roles in local government, notably as the executive mayor of Johannesburg. His leadership there and his subsequent positions as president of SALGA and UCLG and his work with the UN highlight his global perspective and commitment to sustainable urban development. But beyond these impressive credentials, Minister, I actually went around and I asked my colleagues, what would you say about Minister Pax Tau? And what they say from a personal qualities perspective that really resonated with me was that industry stakeholders consistently describe you as inclusive, as a very good listener, as approachable, hardworking, and very meticulous. He values diverse perspectives, demonstrating both humility and approachability in his interactions. These attributes, combined with his vast experience and current leadership, make him a vital force in shaping South Africa's economic future. Please join me in warm welcoming the Honorable Minister Pax Tau. Thank you.
So somebody's setting me up. And they are trying to expose me in terms of what I do. I should say, I didn't realize that there's SABC. So I'm going to censor myself. No. Thank you very much for the warm words of introduction. I should say to the program director, nerve-wracking always happens to me. I have never succeeded with not panicking every time I get onto a stage, so don't worry, we're in good company. And some of the reasons people think I listen well is because I actually don't want to talk back. And maybe to start with an anecdote, Camille, I'm not going to say things we didn't agree to. In my orientation sessions in the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition, one of the intensive discussions we had related to transformation, where we are as a country, what instruments we have in place, how they've performed, and what needs to be done. And we agreed that, in fact, this conversation cannot just end at the point of identifying the challenges. That as a country, in many ways, transformation is existential. That if we are to truly build a country that is non-racial, non-sexist, democratic and prosperous, you can only do that by ensuring that you emancipate those historically disadvantaged, that there is equitable access to prosperity and opportunity in our country. And that is at the core of what, in fact, should be done. And we're talking about the Government of National Unity and the Statement of Intent. And if you read the Statement of Intent, you would realize that we at least place transformation as one of the underlying principles of the Statement of Intent. So that if there's anything that brings us together to establish a government, we should agree on the fundamentals, and those fundamentals must include transformation and fundamental socio-economic transformation. So when we spoke to the department, we agreed that we need to undertake a process of an extensive review of the architecture of our transformation policies, legislation, and instruments. And that work has to be undertaken in consultation with stakeholders and with practitioners, because in reality, it is those who experience it on a daily basis that can share the reality of the opportunities and challenges and their experiences and where they see the gaps. So we agreed that we need to do that. So that's the first point we needed to make, that the process of undertaking a comprehensive review of the architecture of our transformation policies, instruments, and mechanisms is part of the work that we will be doing as a department. But then we also agreed that, but we don't have to wait. We still have the Broad-Based Black Economic Empowerment Act. We've got a whole range of other pieces of legislation, employment equity, etc. So whilst we talk about this comprehensive review, we also need to talk about how we utilize the instruments that we currently have more optimally, and ensure that we're able to extract value from the instruments that we currently have and fix certain things in these instruments so that the work doesn't have to wait for a comprehensive review in policy. In any case, as you would know, any of those processes themselves would be challenged in court, because those who are anti-transformation would look for any platform to challenge all instruments of transformation that are pursued, including going to other countries and suggesting that, in fact, people are being persecuted in our country. So we thought it's important that we identify what we can do now whilst we look at developing a process of comprehensive review. And what I'll be talking about is how we utilize the current instruments at our disposal more optimally. But as suggested by, can I try first of all, Chair, yeah? Advisory Council of Absip. You said other things, like you said you're going to interrogate, and I thought, yo. Well, for some of us, the relationship with interrogation is something else. Takes us to 1980-something at Protea Police Station, having to answer difficult questions. So, as I said, we're going to present these issues, but we're presenting them because they are part of a conversation. We've published the Transformation Fund for public comment. So not only are we inviting interrogation, we're inviting submissions, we're inviting contributions, we're inviting enhancements to the instruments that we're putting in place. So for us, this is an exciting time. We're actually undertaking a roadshow over the next few weeks on the Transformation Fund. And this is actually, in terms of this roadshow, the first of the engagements that we're having. So I think Absip has people in the department or in the office of the minister, because we received your invitation at the time when we were going to undertake the engagement. So you must be having good sources somewhere in the department. But now I must get to the real speech. I haven't moved away from the speech yet. Allow me to acknowledge, of course, all the leaders of Absip and the Advisory Council, and all members of Absip both present today, but also on the platforms, and all distinguished guests, colleagues from the media, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Firstly, let me thank our host, Absip, for convening today's roundtable on the Transformation Fund, which fund is underlined since it is an instrument that sits at the heart of our national project of inclusive economic growth. Ladies and gentlemen, in 1994, we embarked on a journey to dismantle the structural barriers of systemic exclusion. 30 years on, our democracy is relatively secure, and yet the promise of a shared prosperity remains incomplete for the majority of our populace. Admittedly, we have the requisite policies, the frameworks, and institutional architecture, but too often good intentions had failed to translate into on-the-ground impact. Today we have to ask, how do we turn intentions into measurable implementation and policy into meaningful progress? So as I said, we'll be covering 3 areas around this process, and the first relates to closing the gap on enterprise and supply development spend. So ladies and gentlemen, over the past decade, South Africa's broad-based Black economic empowerment codes of good practice have enjoined companies to allocate 3% of net profit after tax to enterprise and supply development. Yet the latest survey by the BBBE Commission reveals that only 61% of these earmarked funds are ever disbursed, equivalent to some 26 billion rand on the table each year. Furthermore, what is concerning is that the Commission found that not only about 62% of the entities that participated in the survey confirmed to having ESD strategies, most of which operate in the property, construction, and financial services sectors, the Commission rightly concludes that this suggests the prevalence of ad hoc approaches to implementing ESD, which reduces the intended impact of ESD as a BBBE lever. As you will agree, the consequences are stark. Opportunities are limited. Black-owned and women-owned enterprises remain undercapitalized, unable to invest in critical assets such as stock, equipment, and premises, because their requirements are not matched by those of matured entities. Therefore, it is an existential imperative that we work together to close the gap between aspiration and action. And how can this be done? And maybe before I get to how can this be done, there are some stories we have shared in the past few weeks as we engage on this matter. So we say, and I spoke about the 61% and the 62%, but many of these companies that get the 61% underperformance in relation to ESD are measured entities. Many of them level 1, 2, 3, and 4 entities. And we have to ask the question, how did we get there? How do you get to a point where a measured entity that's level 1, when you do the audit, says, actually, we don't have an ESD program? Who ticked the box and how did they tick the box? That's one of the problems that we have. There are other more interesting problems, which is many entities declare on the procurement side, which I'm coming to a bit later, that now we've got a procurement from black enterprises and this is our ESD program. Look at the profile, minimum level 4 procurement. Now, what are the requirements to be a level 4? Because it's actually very possible. It's very, very possible to spend all this money in companies that essentially are pale male, but still qualify as level 4. So there's a systemic problem we need to address. And you can't say that it's a problem that's created by somebody else. It's a problem that's systemic. We've created rules and mechanisms where you can become level 4 without an ESD program, qualify to participate in a procurement program that's recognized as level 4, as black, so to say. So you tick the box. And you come out on the other side looking very good, but the reality and practice on the ground is that actually companies that are black-owned, that are women-owned, of those people historically disadvantaged in our country, have not had access to these opportunities because either by design or by omission something has gone wrong. And we've said to industry across the board, you know, one of the things we don't want to do is to undertake a process of policing. So rather than undertaking a process of calling people out, you know, you haven't done this, you haven't done this, the Triple B commissioner is not here, so I can say, you're here. I see you. I wanted to say that the solution is not always in giving you more money for you to get more inspectors so that they can do the audits. Not that that's wrong. But fundamentally we said, how do we create a system where we cooperate and collaborate as opposed to an adversarial platform of engagement? How do we aggregate our efforts? And how do we keep each other honest in the process of implementation? And thus, we identified the need to, not as some people say, you know, sometimes when you go into an interview, they start by saying, the controversial transformation fund. At what point did it become controversial? Because we haven't said anything that's controversial. We're not looking for new money. We're not looking for new instruments. We're not looking for new legislation. We're simply saying, how do we make what we have work? How do we explain the billions that this economy has spent, both public and private, so the public sector does not come out with very good marks itself? both the public and the private sector, how do we explain the amount of money that's sort of gone into transformation? And we look at the results and they don't match. How do we get there? So if we can't explain it, then let's solve it. And how better to do it than to aggregate our efforts? And for those who have successful programs that are working very well and good, we're happy. Let's shake hands, celebrate, pop champagne, do whatever it is that comes with it. We're okay. But in those areas where it hasn't worked, we've already said 61% do not have ESD programs. Why don't we come together and make sure this works? And that's really the attitude and approach that we've taken. So we're saying first, companies need to co-design programs with clear, measurable success matrix. Whether that is the number of formal jobs created, the percentage growth in beneficiary turnover, or the ratio of businesses surviving beyond 2 years, we need to set ourselves measurable indicators. Or secondly, robust accountability mechanisms are required, including quarterly public reporting on ESD pipelines. Disbursements and outcomes will shine a light on laggards and incentivize those that perform. But we're designing this so that we're able to keep each other honest, so that we hold each other accountable. But we're not only just limiting it to enterprise and supply development, we're also saying how do we extend this to equity equivalent programs. So we've had equity equivalent programs in the country where multinationals come to the country. And of course, they want their BBB points, and legislation has allowed for equity equivalents, where those companies that do not sell a stake can create a facility that would count as equity. So the facility is there. I'm not in the business of calling people out, but a lot of these equity equivalent programs, you have discussions and you say, okay, colleagues. And I don't always talk to the other people. I start with the colleagues in the department. So colleagues, in this program, what's the output? And they say, no, you see, upstream we've got 10%, downstream we've got 15%, the balance is side stream. Okay. Who's side stream? Who is this side stream? But in many ways, we're shooting ourselves in the foot. And I'm not suggesting that side stream is not important. Somebody must do logistics, catering, etc., etc. Though those are also important. But in many ways, we're spending money in the economy without focusing those resources in industrialization. We're not building industrial capability amongst black entrepreneurs because we keep them on the side stream. And we measure ourselves on, 75% side stream, we're doing very well. So we need to really look at those things and say, okay, let's change the number a bit into mainstream. Upstream, downstream, side stream. Let's get into the mainstream and sort out the problem. So those are the things that we're talking about and saying, okay, how do we aggregate these efforts? And I should say we've got very many brilliant, well, we don't have too many equity equivalent programs, but some of the equity equivalent programs are quite innovative programs that have been developed that are intended to produce very, very good results. Okay, Kanawata, how long was I supposed to speak? I must kind of go towards the end. I did cover a lot of the things that I was going to say later in my side stream comments. But remember, broad-based Black economic empowerment, colleagues, also includes skills development and creating the skills in industry. So they said I'm left with 5 minutes, so I'm going to give you one sentence. If you deployed all the money that is allocated towards skills development in this country, towards producing the requisite skills to help grow our economy, we shouldn't be struggling with skills and capability as a country. If you just deployed the money and you deployed it optimally, and skills in terms of broad-based Black economic empowerment is a component of what is measured. Now, if you take all those resources and you say, in this industry, let's choose at least one of the industries that perform relatively well in these areas, is the auto sector. So if we say to the auto people, but the amount of money you've put there and the number of engineers, electricians, and all sorts of people that we require, does it really match what we've invested? So there are gaps. And this matter of skills is important because we take our children to all sorts of strange programs and we tick the box. CFO Raman ticks the box. No, I'm not picking on you. Just saying, we tick the box that says, we've done well on skills. And we took kids to some one-day program for 2,000 rand. Oromar, okay, mutoi tutile. But we've ticked the box that we've invested in skills. So we need to focus on this and say, how do we build skills for the economy? And how to utilize the resources at our disposal, whether through SITAs, through skills development allocations in terms of PPE, to ensure that we're able to derive the capability that we require as an economy. So that's the second area. I said I will summarize the other two. And the third is about moving from margins to the mainstream. It's about ensuring that access to finance and skills, as we say, will count for little if Black-owned enterprises remain locked out of the formal value chains. For as long as Black enterprises, women-owned enterprises, are marginalized to the sides of the side streams, then in fact, we're not investing with the intended returns in mind. We're ticking the box about where we're putting the money, but we're not investing to produce the requisite capability from an industrial and economic development point of view. Therefore, anchor institutions, major retailers, parastatals, and large corporates must therefore ring-fence a clearly defined portion of their procurement budgets towards this program. They must partner to ensure that when you look at the shelves in the shops, in the malls that have been established in the townships, you can see the products that are locally produced. When you look at, I've always wondered, I've always had a relationship. I was a young Sowetan in the 80s, so our relationship with the bakery truck is slightly different. Fortunately, the audience here is relatively younger than us, so they don't know. The school with Mashisi Bake said. Who said that baking bread is such a complicated thing that you can't do it in a township? Really? You mean you need a PhD and intellectual property? You mean it's registered with CIPC, or the formula to make bread is 1, 2, 3, 60%? No. It doesn't happen because we're not creating the instruments that ensure that people are able to participate more optimally. So all we're saying is that let's move our people from the sides into the mainstream. Let's ensure that the funds, through the instruments in place, and Mzee and other colleagues will talk to the detail, enables us to achieve that. So those are the objectives. Please add to the objectives. Please help us enhance the mechanisms. And we're looking forward to your contributions. We really are looking forward to your contributions. And we will take you up, Program Director, will take you up because you said you've got many other sessions lined up, as the DTIC would want to book a few of the sessions that you've lined up because we want to continue to engage with you. We think we've got a few things, a few exciting things on the cards, and the Transformation Fund is but just one of them. So we really do want platforms where we engage with yourselves, with practitioners, to help find solutions to the country's problems. And I apologize for speaking much longer than I was allocated. I got excited. Next time I will just read. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Honorable Minister. I would like to call upon Metra Fossa and Ms. Masieva to please come hand over our token of appreciation. Honorable Minister, we're very appreciative that you could take this time. Yes.
It depends, very important.
Thank you so much. Wow, thank you so much, Honorable Minister. Indeed, transformation requires us to be intentional about the processes and outcomes that we aim to achieve in moving our people in the mainstream. Now for the interrogation that the minister was running away from. I call upon our head of the economic desk here at Absip. He's going to moderate the conversation titled Transformation as a Precondition for Sustainable Economic Growth. This will be followed by the Q&A, and because we've asked for your generous participation, we will be having an exam at the end of the Q&A, just to test that you were actually listening. I'm joking. And this session, as I said, will be moderated by Somnoto extraordinaire, my friend, Dumiso Kubeka. I welcome you on stage.
Thank you so much, Program Director Kanyisa, for that very warm welcome. And thank you as well to the Minister for the insightful address that he has given us to really lay the foundation for the conversation that we're going to have with our esteemed am I audible perhaps at the back? Yes. Not really. I think Tommy will sort us out with the mic there. yeah, hopefully it will be on in the next moment. But in the interim, at least I was just buying time so that they can leave the podium. That's the whole purpose of this exercise. But thank you so much for that opportunity. We have the opportunity to really get into the nitty-gritties of today's conversation. The Honourable Minister has really outlined the thinking around the concept transformation fund. And of course, inviting us to be open for engagement and to make inputs. But of course, the Minister has a number of things to take care of to make sure that the economy continues to run. And he does have another engagement that he will be attending to. And so when the opportunity allows, I think Camille and team would like them to give the Minister an opportunity to then take exit. He will be accompanied by the Chair of the Advisory Council of Absip. We would like to give you that opportunity to then exit once we then start the session. Are we good? Wonderful. Yeah. If you well, we're not excusing you. If you're ready, that's fine. That's fine. But ladies and gentlemen, we'll then start with today's conversation. The theme of the conversation that we're having here today, both with the panelists that will be joining us, the attendees, yourselves that are joining us in person, and of course our virtual audience, is to really start engaging with the ideas that are outlined in the concept document of the Transformation Fund. And of course, in this instance, we would welcome the input, the thinking, and the interrogation, because from an Absip point of view, the intention is to provide and to include this input as part of the collective basis of the submissions that we think it would be important to make in this regard. The theme for this conversation is transformation as a precondition for sustainable economic growth. And so to lead us into this particular conversation, I would like to welcome our distinguished panelists. And firstly, I will welcome Ntate Khanki Matabane, who is the Chief Executive Officer of the Black Business Council, to come join us on stage. Can we give him a warm round of applause? You can take your seat over there. Following Ntate Khanki will be Ntate Lovohani Moketi, who is the head of the BBBE Policy Unit at the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition. Can you please give him a round of applause? Can I sit over there? Oh, wonderful. So sit over there. Then finally, joining us as well for the panel is the Chief Executive Officer of the National Empowerment Fund, Mziwabantu Daimani, Black Diamond. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I will take that and put it just here. Thank you so much. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, we had Ms. Rachel Malachi, who was going to join our panel. Fortunately, she was not feeling that well, but she is present with us in the room. And of course, for further engagement, after we've started our conversation, we would want to have an open engagement regarding some of the themes and the issues that are arising in this regard. I will then take my seat so that we start the difficult questions, because transformation is difficult, isn't it? Oh, it's not. Oh, I'm just checking. Okay. No, wonderful. In terms of how we will then proceed with this particular engagement, I will give our distinguished panelists an opportunity to provide their opening remarks in terms of their institutional reflections regarding the concept document related to the Transformation Fund, following which we will follow with one or two key issues that are being raised, and then we'd love to open it up to the floor to put forward questions, comments, inputs, which we think would be quite critical in this instance in relation to this particular discussion. But perhaps to segue into our conversation, I'd like to start with Ntate Khanki. From a Black Business Council, so in your perspective, what is the burning platform in your view? Is there a need perhaps for a transformation fund in your view? If so, what is that particular need? And perhaps you can just share your institutional reflections from the get-go.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. They can hear.
I think, I'm not sure if this thing is working. It's not quite audible. You know, in production, whenever people are recording things, there's an inside joke to say we're always waiting for sound. I think that is one of those moments. Waiting for sound. But as we wait for sound, perhaps Tate Mateban, I'll try Tate Livuani, if his mic is working, and then we can come back as we wait for sound in this instance. And Tate Livuani, your own institutional reflections in this instance.
Am I on?
Doesn't look like. Is it audible?
Am I audible?
Not audible.
Waiting for sound. Okay. Yes.
Go.
Thank you.
Yeah, maybe
Thank you.
Let's use the manual sound.
You would appreciate that we are 30 years into this democracy.
Thanks.
About 22 years since the adoption of the peace strategy. And that was followed actually by the Act itself in 2003. And with that, we set out to institutionalize what economy redress would be like. The content and form was provided in terms of what economic redress should look like in South Africa. Having been preceded by establishment of National Empowerment Fund and other institutions that came after that, which was to give it, you know, a face, but also some semblance of organization in it. Because you'll remember, when Nail Deal happened, there was no PE Act. There was no PE Act or any other legislation and policy. And as I'm saying, 22 years later, we have developed every other institutional mechanism that you know of PEE. And what we see in 2025 is the continuous evolvement of this instrument of economic redress. Transformation Fund is one of the instruments that which will give effect to the ideals, by the way, as contained in Section 9 of the Constitution, the Equality Clause, that actually caters for a principle of fair discrimination. And Section 11, subsection 2 of BE imposes upon all of us to create a comprehensive program that will finance triple BE. Where are we? That's the question. Institutionally, in terms of support and participation of black people in the economy. I would like to posit that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Tate Luvwane. Tate Khanki, can we give you a try?
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Wonderful.
Yeah, I was starting by greetings. I'm from Limpopo, so we always greet people. And I hoped, because people are still in high spirits, they're from church, the response will be very, very optimistic. But I'll start by thanking Absip for inviting us, and Absip, because BBC is a mother body or a father body. Absip is a member in good standing. And I hope people who are here are therefore members of Absip in good standing. Because it's only through that we can strengthen ourselves and strengthen the voice of black business in South Africa. As you may be aware, economic transformation is under serious attack, even from the United States of America. So it's very important that as black organizations we need to be united, and as black people and as black professionals and black entrepreneurs we need to be very united. And again, because we're a mother body, we always pass messages. So the message that I'm passing now to Absip is that other members of BBC, when they saw the flyer, they then said, where is diversity of speakers? So I'm passing that message that in a country like South Africa, where we've got so many females who are competent. The panel must also reflect that. So it's very, very important. Also, when you are raising issues of transformation, it must also apply to yourselves. So I think this is very important. Yeah, but getting to the topic, when you look at post-1994, we came with the legislation, which is triple BEE, but we never came with a funding mechanism for the legislation. We just thought, some miracle will happen, and the funding will happen, and everyone will be happy. And then we should have learned from the Afrikaner empowerment. If you look at the Afrikaner empowerment, they were very, very clear in terms of funding. They've utilized institutions like Salam to fund Afrikaner empowerment. Those of our age will know there was Allied Bank, there was Trust Bank, there was Volkskas. Those were instruments to fund Afrikaner empowerment. And then we came and maybe we just hope some Holy Spirit will come and fund black businesses. And then we sort of depended on what is called the market. And the market then, as you know, they chose whoever they wanted to choose and asked people to go and form companies. They bought some stake in companies that are not necessarily, did not even have anything, but they chose mainly, if you look, those people that probably they could use for one reason or the other. And hence we are where we are. And as the Black Business Council, we support the Transformation Fund. We've been fighting for it for some times. We were part of the people who conceptualized it. And we wanted to solve the right problems, because it's always important to get the problem statement correct. What problem are we trying to solve? Because people will tell you BEE is not reducing poverty and all those type of things, but you say, was it even meant to do that? So when we look at the Transformation Funds from where we are and with the limited time that we have, there's a serious challenge of funding of black business, women-owned business and youth-owned businesses. Obviously there are other challenges like access to the market, but all of you, I think when I look in the room, all of you, one or the other, you may have wanted to start a business, because I know a typical black professional has got a full-time job, but it's got a side hustle on the other side. And if you're trying to fund your side hustle, you go to the bank, let's say you want to buy this building, and they say this building is 50 million. Then they say, no, but you want the skin in the game. I mean, where are you going to get the skin in the game? So for us, the Transformation Fund should also look at those type of things. Because those who are bankers here will know the transaction will go through all the credit and all those things, and then it gets approved, but it gets stuck because someone doesn't have a own contribution. And then what then happens, you'll know as a bankers, they say you must call the big brother or big sister, but they're mainly brothers, who then comes and say, I'll give you this 5 million, but I need 95% of your business. Hence, we are not necessarily transforming, because we've seen it even with the, for example, those who were given mineral rights. What did they do? We are not owning those mineral rights. We are not owning those mines because they did not have what is called patient capital. They then had to go to Canada or go to China or go to Australia. And by the time the mine, we've got a physical mine, they probably own less than 5% of the business. And they have forever been diluted, because then they say, we want to build the mine, please contribute your 90%. And you don't have it, then you give us 90%, then we'll build the mine. So we need to be very deliberate in funding broad-based black economic empowerment.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Hanki, for that contribution. Would like to give our black diamond, Mr. Daimani, your perspective, your initial institutional reflections on this matter.
No, thank you very much, Dumiso, and greetings to everyone. So, the issue of the Transformation Fund, the Minister mentioned that when the 7th administration came into office, we had the strategy sessions and the planning sessions with the Minister, and we actually debated the issue of transformation. And what we all agreed on is that there are policies that exist in the country that were intended to transform the economy, but the economy has not sufficiently transformed. Or in certain areas, the gains of that transformation have been reversed. Now, the question was, how do we make sure that we come up with a concerted effort to ensure that there are resources available? We deal with the issue of markets to assist transformation efforts of government, and also to ensure that we've got opportunities. I think Khangi mentioned it, that there are certain opportunities that black business is given, but they are gatekeepers, like own contribution. So we do need to find solutions to some of those challenges. Then the minister tasked us to say, go and put together a concept that we can actually put out there for people to come and engage with us. So what I'm saying is that we are part of the work of conceptualizing this, so we fully believe in it. And what we are saying is that we are looking for inputs. And it was quite interesting that when we started these engagements, I think those who are against transformation, they started voicing their views the minute they heard about the concept, even before they saw what it was about. That's when the challenges or the attacks started. But what is required of us is that we're gonna need to be, to stand our ground. And black business, we do call upon you to also come into the discussion in all areas, in the media and also around the table. The minister mentioned that there are sessions that he is arranging in order to have those conversations, because we want to make sure that what comes out of this process is a transformation fund that works for the country, that will ensure that we achieve real transformation. We don't want to have the same challenges that we had with the BEE scorecards and companies that are actually claiming to be empowered, when you don't see that when you look at the makeup of the institutions. So it's time, which is why even if you look at the medium-term development plan of government, they've got 3 priorities there. But what they are saying is that there is an apex priority of government, which is inclusive growth and job creation. And what we're looking for is rapid inclusive growth. Now, how are we going to do that if we just talk about inclusive growth, if we talk about transformation, unless we come up with tools that are going to assist government to actually achieve that? So that's why we need the partnerships with the private sector, so that we can lead the initiatives of government. And what is going to silence the criticism that is against transformation is efforts like the Transformation Fund that actually achieve the results and it gets measurable, as the minister said. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Daimani, for that context, and also just also laying it out in terms of where this particular work, the genesis of this work, for us to get to this point. And this is just a reminder for our audience that's also streaming with us online. When we get into the Q&A and the comments, please do share them on our streaming platform. The team will then share them with me, and then we'll be able to put them forward for us to really discuss. Mr. Livwani, in this instance, is there an envisaged criteria from where you're standing in relation to
how this transformation fund can potentially work, particularly when we're talking about priority sectors, for example. What is the current thinking there?
Our primary guide remains the industrial development strategy of the country. We are biased towards productive sectors of the economy and services, because the production paradigm has evolved and is evolving. As you spoke of side streams, upstream, downstream, there are upstream, there's e-commerce. We are conscious of those developments from production paradigm in terms of when we try to put our industrial policy together to drive industrialization. In this case, for example, you are bound to see from our concept, for that matter, our focus on renewable energy across all the components that you think of in terms of us supporting the manufacturing of those. You would see agro-processing itself, from chemicals. You would see, for example, infrastructure, because the reality is that the current context of South Africa is such that you have concentration, whether in terms of areas where there's production, whether you speak of our rural areas, there is also that neglect of those, and that's why, for example, you'll say you focus on infrastructure, meaning that those who will be manufacturing in those spaces will also be supported. The other sectors, like the ICT sector, and in the ICT sector, there's a plethora of opportunities from software development, computer engineering, and every other innovation that young people are coming up with, which actually we are in a frontier where there's been a convergence of services in that area. Even in areas such as business process outsourcing, you'll recall our uptake on call centers and other aspects. But those are new industries, are services industries. Actually, our focus on productive sectors emanates from the fact that if you were to look at the country's GDP, we are less than 13% in terms of manufacturing, meaning that we're a country that normally manufactures for itself. Instead, it's service sectors and other sectors for that matter. And hence, the focus of support that will come from the Transformation Fund is to make sure that you support businesses of black people that are in those spaces, and that is our guide overall. But also, you must understand that there's an interface between economic redress and industrialization. You cannot speak of BEE when black people do not participate in the productive sectors themselves. We can't be in retail songs, retail nandos, and a garage in Malukshin. We can't. We must enter the productive sectors in a big way and be part of the production and the mainstream of the economy, as the minister was saying. Thanks.
Thanks for that, Livwane. I think, Khanki, Livwane makes mention of course, the well-established levels of concentration across a number of industries in the South African economy, and of course, how we then begin to not only scale up production, but also it becomes transformed in a more meaningful way. I wonder then, from the perspective of the Black Business Council, is there a role that the Black Business Council, and particularly the private sector, can play in really the design, the governance, and of course the delivery of this transformation fund that would address these long-standing issues that face the South African economy from a BBC point of view?
Yes, definitely. We are 31 years into democracy, and we basically, black people don't own even a single sector. both the sectors that came after democracy, like renewable energy and all those things, we don't own them. Including even the taxi industry, because you think taxi industry is owned by blacks, it's not. I'm sure you all know who's funding the purchasing of the taxis. So for us, I think it's important that the Transformation Fund should actually fund all the sectors. You only become selective when you think you are dominating any sector. But as we speak now, the facts are there. We don't necessarily dominate any sector. I think from a governance point of view, and then these are part of the tactics that if we want this fund not to end in court, and in the next 5 years we have not necessarily achieved anything, you have to have tactics, and because we have to be realistic, because there's a serious trust deficit between big business in general, society and government, and politicians. And those they did not necessarily happen overnight. We all know when people were dying during COVID, people were busy looting. So you have to understand why people are worried, because if you look at do analysis of people who are talking about the Transformation Fund without even reading the document, the first thing they're saying, yeah, you see these politicians are going to chow the money. 100 billion, sure. They are going to chow all of it. And then that is not like unfounded. We've seen things happening. We've seen money disappearing and all those things. So then how do you make sure that people have confidence in the system before the system even starts? And I think I don't know if Trafosa Raman has left, but they are already, as I'm looking in the room, there are two potential candidates for the board. These are two credible people. Trafosa Ausindi is there. Because you need to put credible people who have been tested. You don't want to put me there, then the money disappears, and then they see you see. and this thing gets frustrated even before it starts. And then it's also always important to always look at the bigger picture. The bigger picture is to make sure that money gets transferred physically from companies into the fund. And that can only happen when the owners of that money feel comfortable and safe that once the money gets there, it's not going to disappear. So it's very, very, very important that we need to ensure that the people that we put as board members are credible. Ideally, they must have their own money. Because when you've got money and someone gives you 5 million, you don't get excited. So don't put us who are hungry. Put people who've got money there, so that the fund is not going to be diverted into somewhere else, but also the objective is not going to be derailed by people taking that one to court and bringing a scandal of that one, and by the time you realize 5 years is gone. Because the people who are anti-transformation, they are very, very good at tactics of delaying things. So it's very, very important that we need to look at, again, credible people, but also and I've got nothing against the NEF, they are our friends, but we need to get people who because if you're looking at those type of people, you need people who then will say, but where do I report? I can't report to the NEF. I'm very senior to the NEF people. But I can report to the minister. So we need to find a way where these people then report to the minister, because we're really Not all of them have got egos, but people who have achieved have got egos. If they feel they are reporting to a junior person, they are not going to come. Because you need to go and beg these people to say, but no man, please, Jaco Mare, come and be a board member. So the way we structure it, we need to look at the bigger picture. The bigger picture is not where they report to and all those things, but they must report to a place where they feel they are being respected. Because remember, they are not going there for board fees. They are not excited that the board is paying them 50,000 per month. No, they are not interested in that. They want to make a contribution. So the way we structure the corporate governance, it needs to be in such a way that you will be able to attract the right people. Because you are not going to attract an achiever if they feel like, I'm not going to report to my peers. And even in the board, they are not my peers. So even in the board, there must be people of similar stature. And then we in our proposal, we said we need to basically almost adopt the solidarity fund model. Because if you adopt the solidarity fund model, it will work. And you basically appoint the similar people who are the solidarity fund. Then let them appoint the CEO. And again, they'll be able to appoint a credible CEO. And I was going to be derailed until 5 years come to an end. We haven't achieved anything. We don't know what's going to happen politically in 5 years. There may be a new party that is in charge. They're still going to learn for the next 5 years. So we'll end up having a revolution. And unfortunately, the people who are going to lose are here. If there's a revolution tomorrow, we're going to lose. That one-bedroom house that you have there will disappear. So for us, I think we are appealing to all the people who are going to make comments. Let's look at the bigger picture. What is it that we want to achieve at the end? We want to make sure that the money moves from the companies to the fund, but it does not disappear when it gets to the fund. It needs to be utilized for the purpose that it's supposed to be utilized for. Otherwise, the money is not going to move. And you want to that's why it's fine that it's not compulsory. Because how life works, people always want to get into a moving train. Once they see the big companies, the Remgrow and others are putting their money there, everyone will want to put their money there. Because remember, majority of these businesses, they are not necessarily in the business of ESDs. And again, what we need to do, we need to then say to them, they must bring the current ESDs with them. So we should not disrupt and say, no, Anglo, that ESD that you are doing is not it. We should not bring it here. If you want to bring it here, bring everything here. Let everything run as is running at the moment, but bring the money here. Because once the money is here, if you don't spend it, then we'll be able then to use the money to fund actual black entrepreneurs.
No, thank you for that. Thanks for that, Hanki. So Hanki raises important issues around corporate governance, risk management considerations, and really the mechanics of how such a transformation fund should potentially work. From an NEF point of view, the concept document talks about an SPV. And in this instance, are there ways in which the NEF has ideas around the management or really the structuring of such an SPV, but really what are some of the perspectives that the NEF has with respect to the contributions that the document makes regarding an SPV and some of the issues that Hanki has highlighted?
No, thank you for that, Ndumiso. Firstly, I'm disappointed in Hanki for two things. Firstly, the fact that he's saying he's hungry. Because he was one of those people that I thought, no, this guy is fed. Secondly, the fact that he doesn't seem to have read the concept document, because I think some of the things he's talking about are there. So, if you look, the transformation fund is actually, it's a government initiative. It's not an NEF initiative. So what we did was to actually execute the instructions, or we actually made suggestions to say government needs to consider something like this, which we actually motivated for, and there was buy-in. Now what we said is that we are willing to sponsor it, so we will actually spend our money to actually do the groundwork to do, which is where we are now. But it's not necessarily to saying that we are actually creating an institution that will belong to the NEF. This is going to belong to the country. And what we are saying is that, and also in terms of the governance structure, if you look at it, actually, if you look at the board of the fund, it does report to the minister. If you read the concept document, that is there, that is actually the way it's going to work. And also, if you look in terms of, and thank you for the nominees to the board, I hope the colleagues from NF have noted them.
I think Metra also is surprised, her name was mentioned.
I've actually already spoken to her, and she is committed to actually work with us. So I think that work, you've done half of it, so we'll just, Metra Force, I will just finish that conversation after this meeting. So, and we fully agree, I think, with what, in terms of the principles, what Trangi is saying is that this fund, we need to use the best corporate governance principles. It needs to be a fund that will be transparent. It needs to be a fund that will have the people with the relevant clout and the expertise that will sit on its board. And also in terms of its strategy and execution, we need to ensure that the fund is not going to do business as usual. Because we are saying that with all that has been happening in the country now, we have not moved the needle. And now the question is, how do we make sure that when the fund does its work, we actually have the impact that we are looking for? Which is why we are saying that we need a game changer, and we need to actually make sure we come up, and we need ideas from rainmakers who can say, this is how this fund can best work for the country, so that it's not viewed, as some people have labeled it, as a slush fund for the connected, or for people who have got political alignment. That is not the intention. This is an intention to transform the economy, to make sure that those who don't have access to funding, they can. We transform the rural communities, we fund the women businesses, and we actually create the jobs that the country is looking for. So from a governance point of view, we definitely going to be ensure that we've got the relevant people in the board, and also in terms of making sure that how the fund does its work and the reporting, we do need to make sure that there is transparency and also clear financial reporting in terms of what is happening in the fund itself. And also, we need to make sure that the fund does open the doors with the other businesses, because Liv mentioned that we need to mainstream. We need to see more businesses within the productive sectors of the economy, and not only relegate BEE to certain sectors that are, as the minister is saying, on the sides.
No, thank you for that. Thank you for that, Mzi. Mic, sound. Thanks for that, Mzi. Now I think we'll give an opportunity to have a discussion. We have a foundational basis of understanding the genesis of the contributions that have been made to the concept document. We have heard perspectives from friends in the form of the Black Business Council, the DTIC itself, and of course the National Empowerment Fund, which has also outlined that they're sponsoring the important work that is related to seeing something like this happen. Ladies and gentlemen, this is then the opportunity we would love to hear the perspectives, questions, comments, inputs from having read the document, some of the critical analysis that you may have conducted in your reading of the document, so that we can see what actually is what in this instance. I would like to then take some hands for this particular session. I already see a hand at the back over there, sir. I will take, let's make it 3 rounds of 3. We'll manage it like that. I see a hand, sir, I see your hand, I see your hand, ma'am, and then let's take somebody from that side. Your hand, sir. Your hand, sir, with the blazer. Then fresh round, I will then note that. My good sir, you can go ahead.
Okay, thank you. My name is Loyiso Mbeta. I'm a founder and hedge fund manager within the industry. I love the last comment of this fund will not be business as usual. And on that note, I just want to highlight something, and this is based on my experience. Mr. Hanke, please don't comment. We spoke about this at the IDC event last year. I'm sure you'll remember me. This is the reality, right? And just to give you a bit of background, I'm a founder, young black entrepreneur, and literally 3 weeks ago, we got our first of 2 FSP licenses from the FSCA, being the category 2, which is for discretionary fund managers, and in a month or 2, we are expecting our CAT 2A. This is the reality. I'm not asking, I'm telling, this is the fact. There is not a single DFI in the country that has, as part of its mandate, the funding of asset managers just for working capital, not even risk capital, just pure working capital. So how is this fund going to be any different from the current status quo of the DFIs, which are just not aligned with the intentions of young black entrepreneurs who want to build businesses and transform the economy, rather than the traditional BEE approach of just buying equity stakes in existing businesses? Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's a great point. That's a great point. We'll see who will take a chance and respond to that. Ma'am, you can go ahead. Tabio, this over there. Yeah.
Good evening, my name is Fatima Vauda, I'm from 274. I've got a couple of questions. So first of all, I felt that the Transformation Fund concept document was extremely light on a lot of issues. So, you know, maybe the details still going to come out. One of the big questions I'd like, answered is what happens to the current ecosystem that exists. So we've got a whole lot of, I think there's a couple of thousand of independent ESD funds that currently exist in the market, as well as organizations such as CEDFA, the NEF. Do they become implementation partners, or do we have this one super fund? What happens to all of these independent ESD funds that exist in the market? So that's one of my questions. The other question is that the BE Commissioner, I'm glad she's here, because one of the big items that have been identified by the Triple BE Commissioner is that government does not meet its obligations with regards to ESD. In fact, the private sector outperforms government when it comes to ESD funding. Okay, sorry, and I've got quite a few questions, so maybe those two, and then we can come back later.
Yes.
Okay, sure.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And then the gentleman there at the back for the third hand. That'll be the first round. Then in the second round, we'll note additional hands.
Yeah, thanks. My name is Ronald Sefalafala, and I'm the director of Falas Property Investment. I'm still going through the concept. And in my reading, I haven't seen where the Transformation Fund concept is talking about how the real estate portion of the industry is going to be funded. And the real estate industry is a $1.2 trillion market. And 800 billion of that is concentrated on the residential portion of the market. And we find as black entrepreneurs and as property practitioners that we are not funded. There's no space. If you go to the banks, you have to have some kind of collateral. If you go to all the funding mechanisms, they'll tell you that they don't fund property practitioners. I'm asking for funding, and I'm probably in the right platform. Falas Property Investments needs cash injection. If you give us 3 million, we will never go poor again. So I'm literally making myself available, to those that are willing to fund us. We will not make your funds disappear, and Falas Property Investments will definitely create jobs and become an effective partner in our communities. Please fund us. We are available, and include us in the concept.
Thank you very much, Ronald. I don't expect anything less from an entrepreneur. And of course, I'm sure, given the professionals that are in this room, an investment committee can convene to address your item. But we'll check if the panelists will then be able to respond to that. Colleagues, I wonder if there are specific questions you'd like to address. The first one was related to the gentleman who's a fund manager as well, and was highlighting the issue around financing and working capital for businesses such as those. The second one was from Fatima, around what happens to the current ecosystem, and of course the private sector outpacing ESD contributions. And finally, Ronald is requesting an investment committee session in this instance. Any takers from the first round? Livwan, you can go ahead. You can use this mic.
I'll leave others for. Let me start with the current ecosystem. You know, as bureaucrats, I'm a bureaucrat, and one of the responsibilities I have is to make sure that I scan the environment in terms of implementation of legislation, policies, and programs of government. This is inclusive of that which we are busy with. As the CEO indicated, we set with NEF to look at the plethora of products and services that which must be supported. And one of those, I remember, Hang, you remember when we ran to you in Parktown? One of the discussions that we had with Abu Hangi was, what about the existing ecosystem, the current ecosystem? One of the questions that I have, by the way, as you go, actually speaks to that. They said, I always say, BE created accidental industries. That you will not even fund accountability or provisions within the Act that which will hold those that participate as BE, whether consultants or practitioners. But those industries exist. In the case of the aggregation, we are not forgetful of that ecosystem. That ecosystem is constituted by those consultants, by business development service providers, ESD consultants, and all of those. We are not forgetful of that. But by the way, with the SPV, all of the existing fund managers and others that place in this space, they'll have to enter into a partnership agreement with the SPV, be held to the terms that which are stated in the product offering that is contained in the in the concept document. Maybe I'll agree with one colleague that said, hey, it's too light. Now you're still going to get Jews. You're still going to get Jews because there's Jews from us. But there's also Jews that will be coming from this collective. Because for us to take transformation forward on a trajectory that will change the ownership of means of production, we need your assistance. There's this, they say that government does not meet its obligation in terms of ESD. Government operates within a specialized scorecard. And government's mandate, you understand it, is to deliver service to South Africans. An instrument such as the Transformation Fund is to lead that ESD fund that you are referring to start to have an impact. Because the first line of contributors will have to be government in their diversities and some organs, because others have an economic mandate, others exist to provide service and policy, regulations and other legislative related functions. The other one on real estate funding not captured, Baba, it is there. I don't know, Siswamla, when we're busy writing that, I know that there's residential and commercial. Rest assured, Baba, rest assured that finance, when it comes to real estate, this funding or transformation fund will cover that aspect, and will be happy to one day wake up and have diverse owners of properties, whether in Sandton or Gwanrebele, Gwamhlanga, and anywhere. I think I've covered some of those aspects. I said I will leave some of those things to you, Mchan.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe let me just start with my observation. And I think this is one of the challenges that we've been facing since 1994, and especially black professionals. So we have this problem of thinking someone else sitting there will solve the problem. So now there's this concept document. The reason why it's a concept document is that when you see something that is missing there, your job is to then put it there, is to highlight it, and is to make a submission. Not to say, no, my tax industry is not there. That one is not there. That one is not there. And I know we haven't been there. I think we're amongst one or two black organizations when we're making presentation on the public procurement bill in Parliament. So my observation is that we sometimes were our own enemies, worst enemies. We talk a lot, but when it comes to, when it matters, like when it comes to sitting down, writing a document, making a submission, we are very thin. And I attribute this to the very same issue I'm making, that we always think someone else is going to solve my problem somewhere, not me. So my appeal is that let's take accountability and responsibility. No one is going to come and save us. We must save ourselves. So when there's an opportunity like this of making a comment, whether I want to criticize it or want to do this and this, do it. Sit down alone, because you don't have to be an association or an organization to make a contribution. Sit down as an individual and say, I've read page 10, I think it can be enhanced with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's taking responsibility, accountability, but making a contribution. I can bet out of us here, I'm not sure how many we are, maybe 100. you are likely to receive like less than 5 inputs, return inputs. It's not a theory, I'm sure. There have been so many legislations where we were supposed to input. We don't input, the legislation get passed, we come and complain. As if we just woke up now when the legislation is passed. So I'm just making an appeal that let's take responsibility and accountability. When you are given an opportunity to input on something, let's stop complaining. Let's make inputs to ensure that, and as practitioners also, you'll have most of us will be much closer to the ground than Livu who's at the DTIC. But it's our responsibility to make sure that we highlight those things that he may have missed. But you don't highlight them by complaining in the passages, but not when you're supposed to make a formal submission, you don't make it. So I think that is just my appeal.
Thank you so much. Rizzi?
Yeah, no, thank you. So maybe firstly, just to deal with the issue of the credit committee that needs to sit urgently. I think it was Mr. Mpeta. So I think, Mr. Mpeta, as the NOF currently, we do fund companies in financial services. So in fact, the credit committee of the NF is sitting in this table here. So, and some of them, they're just in front of you, the colleagues. You can just engage them. I think we can talk about the specifics of your particular case, and then we can look at how we can best assist. But I fully agree with you that the Transformation Fund, it cannot be business as usual. There are certain things where perhaps the current solutions that are available in the market are conservative. And also, if you look at, because that's one of the areas that we've highlighted in this Transformation Fund, if you look at how many black businesses are being lost through business rescues and other mechanisms, and we do not have a solution that can actually assist those businesses when they go through those challenges. We don't have a war chest like other people. Other people, they've got relatives who can assist them. So this fund does need to address some of those issues. And this also talks to the issue of supporting other funds within the ecosystem from the Transformation Fund. It's definitely part of the thinking that this particular fund, we do need to make sure that we fund implementers that are actually very strong. That will give us, because the issues, as we've said, it's inclusive growth and job creation and transformation. So to the extent that there are people who've got those solutions, they will be supported through this particular fund, and we will be working with the existing funds. We're not saying there's going to be closure of the existing players in the ecosystem, but what we're saying is that we are going to strengthen those players. We are going to make sure that in terms of the support that they provide and their own governance systems, that is strengthened. And now when it comes to the Transformation Fund itself, talking maybe to some of the issues that my fellow panelists have touched on, to say the concept is thin. We're actually now at a stage where we are also about to appoint advisors that will actually assist with the fund going forward. What is out there is a concept. So what we wanted is to actually get input from you to say, here is the concept, give us your inputs. And we actually also invite you. I know I've seen quite a number of people who are experienced in actually setting up funds, who are experienced in actually working in the financial services industries, to come and work with us in actually putting this together. We've actually engaged some of them already, but you know, some of them were quoting us in dollars, and then you can see that I think there is misalignment of thinking. People are hearing 100 billion. They think they can make their own 100 million through this. But what we're saying is that we need to work together, and we are actually going to be working with people which will pay, but we're not going to pay someone 40 million to set up this fund. But it's an appeal to you. If you've got proposals that you can make, even on that kind of work, please come and talk to us. We want to work with you.
Thank you very much, Mzi, and fellow panelists for that. I think the call is quite clear. The opportunity is there to really engage this concept document. I requested some additional time so that we have a bit more engagement. Program Director, with your permission, just 10 minutes to include some more inputs. I will first start with Yamgele. He has a specific announcement to make in relation to the concept document. I had noted you, ma'am. I had noted the gentleman with the glasses. You've been raising. Okay. Oh, okay. I will. So for this round. And already it's an all-male. Yes. No, noted. So it's Yamgen will make the announcement. The lady, the gentleman, the table at the front, and then at this side. The lady, yes, ladies.
We're helping them understand.
And then on this side, the hand at the back. Okay. All right, that will be round 2. And if time permits, we will see how it goes. Yamgen?
Sure, thanks. Mine is a tiny one. I think it might have been missed out on Minister's speech. During the lunchtime, I think we have released a statement that says that we're extending from 7th of May to actually now 28. So I thought the CEO and my big colleague that they might forget these things, so I'm younger, I must take responsibility and remind them. So I thought that must be noted so that people don't think that they have short time. They have time to allow members to also be engaged and go back and come with those dynamic and exciting ideas. Thanks.
The breakfast.
Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Okay, no, thank you so much. Just to confirm, the 28th of May. Okay.
Initially it was 7th.
Yes, okay. So the deadline has been extended for the submissions that are being made both here today and also post this particular event to the 28th of May. Ma'am?
Thank you so much. My name is Takani Makaiya. I was one of the people who, sorry. I don't want to stand up, but I will.
Please go ahead.
Okay, my name is Takani Makaiya, and I'm very excited about this transformation fund. However, I just have some questions regarding this fund. What is it seeking to transform? I know it's a very controversial question. However, we had BI, and it was one of the biggest funds that were seeking to transform black industrialists that were supposed to create great job and industrialize. And that fund was great. It answered access to finance, access to land, access to market. However, to be honest, it didn't even touch black industrialists. We don't see any value on it. So we want to find out, I want to find out, this transformation fund, is it gonna, be different from any other funds that we have? As you know, we've got beautiful policies in South Africa, but implementation is a problem. And I am worried, very worried, because even Mr. Luvuani has specifically said transformation is regressing. I'm asking myself, why? Because in those boardrooms, in those big positions, CEOs and board members, it's a black face. Are we the gatekeepers of transformation? Are we the one who are blocking black entrepreneurship to go on? We did a survey regarding that BI fund, and we realized that certain black people were funded. I just want to find out also from Mr. Livuani, when we talk about BEE, black people, which categories are you really looking at? Are you looking at really black women face? Or you're looking at Indian, Chinese? Because BI, I want to be honest, we need to be honest as the people, because it's said that we're not honest. We sit here, it's nice, it's like talk shows, we put input, with BI, I was there from day one to the end, and we brought great industrialist projects, not just filling station that Mr. Livon was talking about. I'm talking about manufacturing asphalt. It's Kontiri, if you don't know. I was supposed to be the first black female to do that. And the support, because government is the biggest buyer of asphalt. You know, Sanral is the biggest buyer. But they failed to support us. Whereas they're saying access to market, access to funding, access to land. What is this transformation fund going to be different? And I want to know, when you talk black, what kind of black are you talking about? And when you're talking about women, which one? Thank you.
Thank you. Then the gentleman in the middle, just in front of the camera.
Thank you very much. My name is Lebo Kunguluza. I'm a former dragon. That means I invested in a number of companies with Prelude, who is apparently the president of Absip. I just want to share something, and I think this is from experience, because I've invested in companies even during the show and whatsoever, even outside. But I've always just felt that, you know, you invest in a company and there's always so many politics. And then I changed. Then I started focusing on short-term investment to make sure that we support all these entrepreneurs that get projects, tenders, and contracts. Because the biggest challenge, as much as you talk about this 20 billion, I've got a feeling that it's going to end up to the same pockets that it always ends up in for the last 20 years. It always ends up to the same politicians, etc., etc. I won't say more. But I just feel that I think there's a better system, and I'd like to contribute to you, Minister, that if we can identify these companies that are providing short-term financing, that means to empower our people when they get projects, when they get opportunities, at least to be able to deliver. Because the biggest problem is that our entrepreneurs in South Africa, we do get opportunities, whether it's in mining or manufacturing. The problem is the liquidity to get them to deliver and to save their face. You understand where I'm coming from, eh? So that's why I decided to set up my own fund of 100 million. So I support entrepreneurs that are struggling to complete projects and obligations on projects that are given by the same government so that they can save face. So that's what I do. And I'm trying to say there are other companies that are providing those opportunities. Those involve purchase order financing, tender financing, contract financing. And I think it's extremely important for government to focus on that because that's where the need is at. And I think the Transformation Fund, if they really want to transform South Africa, they should work with all these organizations that are providing those purchase order financing, tender financing like us, so that we can work together to save the face of our black people, because our black people are always seen not to deliver. The reason why they don't deliver is not because they don't have the skill.
Yes.
They just don't have the money to fulfill an obligation. I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Then up front.
Thank you very much. I promise you, Khanki, I will be putting this on paper. The critical element of looking at the productive sectors, because indeed it's important that we do move away from just wanting to own things, but know how to make things, build things. So with that, the industrialization and manufacturing comes with other economic policies, and it's very important that we get some alignment. Key to being competitive as a country comes with working very closely with the Department of Labor. And also when we talk alignment, even within the department itself, we've had a few master plans to try and rescue industries that were making industries, textiles, the sugar cane farming environment, where there were even biofuels to come from sugar cane. So it's going to be important that we align this transformation fund with some of these other initiatives that have come out of the DTINC. I mean, the discussion around also us being very patriotic, and also maybe the whole Africanism and loving things that come from the township. There's rural economies that we speak about very strongly in the paper. Mindset is very important amongst us as Black people. I sit here today, and maybe I should have done my homework. I don't know what has happened to Proudly South African as an entity that was under DTINC, whether it still exists, but it is no longer visible. So those are some of the things that even when we start new things, as the lady said, let us, reference the work that it is a foundation. So that is something that will be very important for us. Thanks.
Thank you so much. We have a last hand, and then we'll request responses from our panelists, and then, unfortunately, that will be a program director is on my. Oh, you have hands. Yes. Okay. Metrap, can I take that hand and then close with you? As the closing note. Last hand at the back, and then up front.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Benjamin Hlope. I'm a business owner and an engineer by profession. I would just like to contribute and ask this fund and the transformation initiative, what has led to the figure of 20 billion rands over 5 years, and why only 5 years? And is it sufficient to make meaningful and true impact in a country as large as South Africa? And then are we only restricting it towards, I could say, transformation, or should it be focused and open to everyone with priority and on transformation, so that it does not need to look biased? And then are we also, through this fund, maybe from its size, meaning that we are restricting the Black-owned or the transformed businesses to be tiny industries? I mean, like, if you look at 100 billion over 5 years, the output you're gonna get there many will fail, and like any other business and any other investment and any other seed sowing. So the quantity, is it enough to reach a threshold that will generate the intended outcome?
Thank you so much for those questions. Metra Fosa?
Thank you. Sometimes the young people, they must be taught that abogogo, when they're here, they need to be given opportunity. Firstly, the Freedom Front says when they criticize the fund, they say it's a buying remission of sins, which means they're thinking that this is another pot of corruption that we are actually putting together. But the most important thing, I think, as we put our comments into this, the naming convention, I'm still saying the naming convention is very important. We know that it will be a transformation, transforming the economy, but we have to think of the naming convention. And as Khanki was saying, like, look at the Solidarity Fund, because this is a unity in terms of and collective action between government and the private sector. You want the private sector to buy into it, you also need to think of that collective unity with, in the manner that solidarity was actually done. We have a model in that. And then the other thing is that is very important is that, I mean, the difference between the BI and then the way this fund is being conceptualized is that the other one was through allocations, okay, from the DTIC and managed in IDC. This one, it will be a more private sector led, right, because we are taking that ESD money that was supposed to be spent, that 30-something%, and pulling it together into one fund, and that requires that collaboration with the private sector, which is very, very important. And thank you, Khanki, for highlighting the issue about the governance structure of that, because it's very important. If you get the governance structure wrong, we're going to be talking again that. Then the other thing is that the most important thing that I'm seeing is the underlying legislation is the BEE, which is key in that aspect. But the priority sectors that we are actually putting into the fund, maybe we need to expand it as well to make sure it's much more inclusive. And also the issue of women and youth, they are being mentioned, but when you look at it, they're mentioned, I think, in one paragraph or two paragraphs, all right? So there must be that intentionality in terms of how we're going to make sure that women and youth are actually captured, because the revolution you are talking about, Khanki, is going to come from young people. Young people, 2000, they don't know what this country went through. They've got no clue. They are happy. Things are working. What is the fund for, etc. We do need this fund. I support the fund, that it has to happen. But we have learned from the other experience of the other funds that the SPV will give it a little bit of accountability and the see-through in terms of that. And I just want to appeal to the young people and the participants in there. We just need to write and put our comments. One thing that us as black people, even black professionals, we are being beaten by that, because we sit here, we comment, we talk nice English, but when we're supposed to write and put the comments, we don't do that. And the comments that are there are for those that didn't even have the session, are the ones that sat and underlined it and put those comments. So I'm just appealing to the young people and everybody that is in here, even in your own personal capacity, put the comments. The more the comments we have and send to DTIC, the better. And then they'll be able to say, at least we have listened. Otherwise, they're going to listen to those that have provided comprehensive comments. Some are using the legal firms. They're analyzing it, they're doing it legalistically, etc. And then by the time DTIC then looks at it, and they become deflated. Because our own people that you are trying to redress these imbalances are not participating. Participation is very important, and especially the young people. Don't give up, please. That's why we are still here. I have grandchildren, but I'm still here. Don't give up. This is our country, and then we must believe in it. We are not perfect. Mistakes have been happened, but we can only learn from mistakes. America, although I'm not a supporter of the president there, but all I'm saying is that it's demonstrated that you can do things to protect your economy, all right, for the benefit of your own people. Let's learn on that, and let's use the G20 as an opportunity as well. Let's not, because we want to be private sector led, there's nothing wrong in saying whatever we call it a naming convention, and the G20 countries contribute towards it. Say, all give you $1 million towards this. We want to transform this economy. And let me tell you, it will work. They will commit, those presidents, to put into the fund. So let's think outside of the box, because of, they say, the superpowers now in the world, as you see this deglobalization, are the ones that have owning the critical minerals. And if you don't know that, the future of the continent is the one that is going to determine how things are being done. If we really want to industrialize, we want to transform, we need to work in a collective way. And the private sector knows that, and they will support it, but only if you have the right governance structure. But utilize the G20, don't miss that opportunity of the G20 in making sure that this fund becomes a success. And it's a naming convention. They can only do it if the naming convention is right. And you also, the objective of it is much more clearer in that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor Triforsa, for that input as well. Fellow panelists, colleagues, there are quite a number of questions to get through. Any first takers in terms of the questions that have been put forward in the comments, responses? Any takers?
Maybe I can come.
Okay.
Yeah, because they were taking on, Tsakade was speaking to me directly, so that I don't miss that. What is the Transformation Fund seeking to transform? The reality is that ownership of means of production has not changed. You can go to any sector. There are either 4 or 2 monopolies with business with business models that are end to end, with subsidiaries that start with the backward linkage from the source or inputs to that to what you ultimately consume. I mean, you'd understand the work that, for example, the Competition Commission is seized with, is to try and disconcentrate this economy. And the aspect that relates to economic redress that puts us together today, which is BEE, is to have all of you and those that are not here to participate in the economy. 1998, we tried and established the NEF. As I said, it even preceded the Act. It was for the same reason, to have black people to be owners of means of production. The sad part of it, actually, if you analyze post-apartheid and democratic phase of South Africa, is that our areas, townships and rural areas, became displaced as economic centers. Go to Amaskral, what happened to Abelech? Go to Harankua. Go to Etimbaz in the Eastern Cape, Okayetoa. All those areas, and the Northwest, by the way, let's put that one, although Ngwala Alexandra, there were industries. There were industries that were owned by black people. Or Rumulope. They will get from the source and beg for us, Isingwa and others. And the Transformation Fund is an attempt to resuscitate that. For example, if you look at the 5 pillars of the Transformation Fund, where we focus on township and rural areas. But they can't exist on their own if they're not connected to existing industries. Hence the aspect of ESD. You remember there's 1% ED in that represent and 2% of SD. It's one of the things that, for example, as crafters of this particular instrument that we are developing, and say that how do we bring those that are very good in SD, for example, supply development, so that those ones that are in township, when they produce, there's a market. That's what we must be seized with. Because outside that, definitely it will be money that is being spent and there are no markets. I'm one of the architects of BI, wrote it. Rachel, who's here from the B Commission, was seized with post-investment, looking at whether our investment is resulting in a success. You can have a bilateral. She will just give you a sense of what happened. The difference between EBI, the Transformation Fund, is that the Transformation Fund is born out of identification of gaps, pre-investment. As you say, patient capital, technical support for technical specification, because other industries, I was in UJ last week looking at global value chains. They were raising issue of barriers to entry that come as a result of technical specifications, particularly for local companies. And that's what some of us will encounter, but Transformation Fund will be able to assist us actually to this effect. EBE. BE is black, it's African, Indian, and colored. And the 20,000, and the descendants of the 20,000 Chinese, you remember, colleagues? That's BE. The challenge currently, particularly for us, I'm speaking of Africans, is to change our gear to the next level and start to participate, as I said, in the productive sectors. Yes, the frontier is changing, but who's going to process those minerals, the critical minerals that are there? With the EV, the rise of EV, it must be us who waiting for those opportunities and getting the off-takes with those ones that are, for example, in the automotives. One good example, by the way, in South Africa currently, from the SD side, it's again, is the automotive sector through the AITF. I think we can replicate in other areas, particularly those of us that will be seized with how to manage the funds. Yeah, what has led to the 20 billion quantum? Honestly, let me be, 2019, as the DTIC conducted a study, and annually, out of the companies that are in top 100 in JSE, in that survey, we discovered that about 17 billion. There was 17 billion of ESD, just with the sample that we took. And in 2022, with our HL, their study showed that about 20 billion is in circulation annually of ESD, either not being used for that matter. And honestly, transformation, I think all of us, we must know our history. Transformation is fair discrimination because there's historical injustice. And when you have a transformation fund, you can't support everyone. It's for a reason that you support black people. They don't own means of production at all, from primary industries. I would leave others to my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vivian. Thank you, and then
Again, I think it's important to understand what problem are we solving. And maybe just to remind colleagues that we need to sustain our democracy. And you can only sustain our democracy by making sure that the majority of the citizens owns the economy. And it's different from Europe, the US, because they are trying to empower the minority. And they can drag that thing forever and nothing will happen. But if you are trying to empower the majority like here, if you are not moving fast enough, if you're not moving fast enough, one day the majority, because they won't be owning anything, it's easier for the majority to say, let's render this country ungovernable because we are not benefiting anyway. And I'm sure we are very much aware that I think the majority have been very, very patient. And they've got nothing. We're not a sample here, a representative sample of the majority as we're sitting here. Just go to, during the day, that's why political parties are able to have thousands and thousands of people marching during the working hours. it's because people are unemployed. They are not participating in their own economy. That is the problem we're trying to solve. And if we are moving as slow as we are, one day it's going to happen. And we'll be sitting in the estate where you stay, and then they'll just go and get into the gate and come and take your car. So it's very, very important that the few of us who are privileged enough, we need to push for the empowerment of the majority. Maybe let me just touch on the BI issues. The challenge that we've realized with BI was that there was and there still is a policy misalignment. And I was having a conversation with a colleague from the IDC that they funded a black industrialist who had a tender at Transnet. I think they were funded the person for 500 million. The tender came to an end. Another company won the tender. Now, the person who was funded is got a 500 million problem. The IDC is sitting with a 500 million problem. And this is the program of government, BI. Transnet is owned by government. And because there's no legislation that basically compels Transnet to say, because government has spent money there, we're going to support that person. This thing will always happen. And hence we have been fighting for the Public Procurement Act, which is an act now to basically replace the PFA. Those who are in government will know the procurement legislation. So one thing that we managed to win, and maybe professionally win, because it's now in court again, there's something called set aside. So where we've got a set aside, Transnet can say, no, but this person was funded by the IDC, this is government's money, we are setting aside this contract for this person. Unfortunately, the legislation, the president signed it, but it's not implemented yet because we are still working on the regulations. And again, we don't see black professionals working on the regulations. And then we'll be complaining later to say, but this thing is not favoring us. So it's very important that we need to get involved. So if you look at a lot of people who were funded from a BI point of view, and I think this fund also will have the similar problem if we don't solve access to the markets. You'll get funded, but there's no market, then what? But you still need the funding. So this fund is not going to be it's not going to solve all the problems that we have, but it's a step in the right direction. Because if you don't have access to the markets, because of concentration, nepotism, and all other things, you'll have the problem that we have, because you are busy producing here, but no one is buying this other side. Then what? So our appeal: let's support this legislation, but let's also support other legislations that are trying to solve the other side of the coin, which is access to the market. Access to market is very, very important, because you need to have customers. You need to have people who can pay, and the state is very important. That's why we've been focusing on the Procurement Act, and we tried to say that this Procurement Act must also apply to the private sector. But you can imagine the amount of opposition that we got. even from government. But it's because we are not participating where it matters, because numbers are important. If you are sitting as Levu, you receive 100 inputs. 5 of them say we support the transformation fund. 95 say no. What are you going to do? Because South Africa is a constitutional democracy, very litigious. They are going to call Levu if he decides, no, we want the transformation fund. They're going to call Levu in court and say, give us the evidence. Give us the submissions. We want to count them. When they count them, they say, but there's only 5 that supported this. So where do you get the mandate from?
Yes.
Because we are sitting here and complaining on WhatsApp groups. I'm sure those who belong in WhatsApp groups, you go to sleep at 12 o'clock, when you wake up at 6 o'clock, they're like 200,000.
Yeah.
And they're complaining, Joe. These complaints are not going to have any impact anywhere else. It's fine, it's a psychological exercise helping you, but it doesn't have impact. So let's focus on things that have got impact. Thank you.
No, thank you so much, Hanki Mzi.
Yeah, no, thank you. So, Olive actually has got a tendency of answering everything, and then he says, I leave the rest to others to answer. So, maybe just to touch on the, I think it's Tsakani who raised this. I think she started ngomfutho in her question, but then she became diplomatic in the end. the issue of the categories of black people. So, the question that we need to ask ourselves is, in terms of the available support, why is it certain categories of people? I think Livu correctly pointed out that black people is Africans, coloreds, and Indian people. The question is, why are some categories of black people struggling to access the funding? I think that's the point. And that's the question that the Transformation Fund needs to answer. There are a number of challenges that are linked to that. Questions of, I think, Kangi touched on own contribution and equity contribution. A lot of people within the African communities will not have access to that. And unfortunately, when some approvals come from the financial institution, they've got that requirement. And those who have, they will be able to take those opportunities. And unless we start to recognize the challenges that we're dealing with and the solutions that we come up with, and which is why it's very important that we get your comments to the Transformation Fund, and they need to ask those questions so that the solution can actually come to those issues. We need to address the challenges that we have. If there are challenges that the Black Industrialist Program could not answer, for instance, you know the Black Industrialist Program is a reimbursable program. You don't get the money up front, you must spend the money and then go and claim it. That's part of the challenge there. It's a good scheme to have, but we need the Transformation Fund to answer the challenges that came with those kinds of programs. So it's not to say the existing programs of government, we must throw the baby with the bathwater. We still need them, but there are bigger problems that we are faced with. And there are problems, for instance, of certain categories. I think it's Lebo who mentioned the examples of purchase orders. We do need to have funding solutions that will actually target those. I was speaking to a group of professionals the other day. They were mentioning, it's professionals, chartered accountants, but they were telling me the challenges that they have with working capital. And when you look at them, these are professionals who are doing well. But at the end of every month, they have to stress because they are struggling to pay salaries, even though they've got a lot of work, but there is a solution that is required to address the problems that business is facing. So those are the things that we need to actually focus on in terms of the fund. Now, in terms of the quantum, we get this question. I was actually surprised that it didn't come in this session. I'm glad it came, to say, why 20 billion? And in other forums, it actually was couched differently to say, you are too ambitious. You won't even get to 2 billion. Some are saying 20 billion is too little. And I think Lebu answered that question, but what we're saying is we need to have a start. So the 5-year term is not saying that after 5 years we close the fund. When you do fundraising, you will have rounds of fundraising. But now what we need to come up with is a concept or a fund that we are actually aligned in terms of what should be the first round of fundraising for this fund. There's one area, I think, of fundraising, which is the ESD funds. Also, I think chairperson there mentioned it, to say there are also international funders that we actually need to target. So this fund, we really need to think broadly when we're looking at it, because we need some of the funds that will be coming from ESD. If you, in the current legislation, ESD funds can also be given as form of loans. And in terms of what we're trying to do, we're going to need grants, and we're going to need equity or other structures of funding. So I anticipate that you're going to have different categories of funding available within the transformation fund itself, because we're trying to solve, because you are not going to be able to solve the challenges of the rural areas and some of the groups that we want to empower if you don't have access to concessionary funding. Thank you.
Thank you so much, colleagues, for that input. It is quite clear that we require more time for this engagement because there are quite a number of issues that we could really dabble into, and there are also a number of comments and questions that have also available online. And of course, I do need to be honest to our program director. I had requested 10 minutes, and we have exceeded that amount of time. But I think, Metra Fosa, it is quite clear that this engagement, there needs to be an extension of this so that the comprehensiveness of the submissions that is made is able to fill in the gaps that have been raised here this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank all of you for contributing and participating in this segment of the engagement. I want to thank our panelists who have also offered their time, their experience and their contribution to this particular conversation. And as a thank you, I'd like to call upon our program director to offer a small token of appreciation for your contribution to this conversation here this evening. We will just help you there. Just take two. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ricky. Thank you so much, Avery. Thank you. If we can take a quick picture with our... No, thank you. Okay. With Mechanki. Yeah. Yes. Mechanki, can you please take a... Whilst we take a picture, can you please give our panelists a round of applause, and yourself a round of applause, please. Program director, please come join us. Thank you so much. Program director.
All right. Hello. All right. Thank you, and good evening to everyone. So, I have two confessions to make. The first one is that there are a few hours between you and your Freedom Day, so I don't want to stop from that. and there's also a couple of words between you and your dinner, so I'm just going to go straight to them. My name is Kaya Sitole, and my responsibility is to simply just express a word of gratitude to everybody that has participated in this conversation today, in particular the Honorable Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, Mr. Pakstau, in his absentia. We also are very grateful for the participation of our Chair of the Absip Advisory Council, Mr. Trifosa Ramosa. Trifosa Raman. I'm trying to get to the Ramaphosa part. Yes. Also, I would like to thank the team behind the scenes that has managed to get this conversation to be here, and in particular the Absip team that has been able to get this conversation going. And I would also like to specifically thank the head of our BEE policy unit at the DTIC, Lebohani Mukliti, the CEO of the BBC, Mr. Hanki Makabane, with the very important questions that he raised about the very testosterone-filled optics of our stage, something that we should never repeat again. Also, our members and stakeholders who've been engaging. There's actually been a lot of questions that have come through on the online platform, and we'll try and incorporate those into our final conversation point. Absip office team that has got us here, thank you very much for that. And more importantly, the members and the stakeholders who have joined us here in this particular conversation, thank you very much. And there's also someone who is probably a bit shocked that I'm here on stage, because I remember on the very first day of this conversation when we started trying to figure out what it's going to look like, and that's the Chief Executive Officer of the National Empowerment Fund, Mr. Mziwabantu Taimani. It's been an interesting couple of weeks since we started this thing in a strategy session a few weeks ago. But thank you very much for elevating it into what exactly you had said you wanted it to be when the conversation was started at that particular strategy session. And on that note, just to make it clear that we will be making a formal submission as Absip, but I think also there'll be members who will be making their own individual submissions. The 28th of May is indeed the deadline, so those of you that would like your submissions to be incorporated into the Absip submission, you're free to do so. But I also do encourage many more people to make individual submissions, because we know what's going to happen at the end of it. Somebody will say, how many said yes? And somebody will say, it was 3 black people. How many said yo? It was 27,000 other organizations, and you know exactly how that ends. Thank you very much. Dinner will be served outside. Please make sure you eat. I mean, it is there, and also a couple of drinks out there. And thank you. We'll see you soon. Bye.
Yeah, thank you. Before you head out, ladies and gentlemen, sorry, just one more announcement to make. The NEF is hosting a business breakfast on the 5th of May. Please register on their website. It's going to be at the Freedom Park in Pretoria. So yes, please, dinner is that side. Let me not be the one standing between your wine and dinner. Good night, everyone.